It's been a long time coming. All sorts of delays came up, and the interview with the Rockstar Vienna employee also shook up how I was going to approach this video. But here we are. This is going to be my attempted breakdown of what I think Rockstar Vienna's Manhunt 2 storyline would have been, complete with whatever relevant gameplay changes would have gone on. For reference, my track record for predicting past game stories and concepts has been pretty bad. I mean, you can look at my Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League video for evidence of that, where I guessed completely wrong that they were botching the game on purpose because they were sick of working on it after 9 years. Which turned out to absolutely be not the case. They were just being hamstrung by publishers, and Rocksteady was trying their best with a bunch of conflicting demands. So, props to them for trying at least. I also predicted that the gang leader in Hotline Miami 2 would have had a bigger focus in the story originally, and that Evan was supposed to fight prisoners originally, based on sprites and other theoretical concepts. Both of which turned out to be wrong as well, so 0-3 batting average. I'd say I have a pretty good shot of guessing this right. I'm just going to go down the line based on the level order, which is going to be based on the internal level order. That's commonly what people think of when it comes to how the story was supposed to go, and based off what we know from that Rockstar Vienna employee interview, it seems like that's still the case. I'm not positive it was the original storyline's order, but I'm going to assume it was for the sake of consistency. This is my theory as to what the story would have been around the time of the 2006 build. Unless stated otherwise, factions use their beta designs. The basic setting details are the same. The story is set in Cottonmouth, which seems to be Louisiana based on New Orleans. The flashbacks are in 2001, and the current levels are in 2007. Unlike what the original document suggested, the one I had written up, and what other fans believe, I think Leo was still a part of Danny's mind in this story. The difference is that Danny remembers this after doing the Cortexa shot in Ghosts, so it's not a twist that Leo is part of Danny's head. Player learns this not long after that level. Danny trusts Leo and sees him as a way to overcome more intimidating or grueling obstacles. Leo is still aggressive and despises the project, but he isn't completely using Danny here. His goal is to take down the project, not so much take control of Danny. The same themes of MKUltra, brainwashing, conspiracies, and mind control come up. The Pikmin Bridge exists to implant killer personalities into ordinary people. Danny volunteers for money and as a way to salvage the project's reputation. Unlike the main game, Dr. White is the ultimate villain of the story, though it can potentially end with her alive and well. Dr. Pikmin and Michael appear as secondary antagonists, similar to how they are in the final game. With all that context established, let's get to each level, starting with Escape Asylum, or Awakening. Danny is the playable character, and the plot details are about the same as the final version. There are clear indications given that Leo isn't real, such as him appearing in a ghostly way in the opening sections, sort of like what happens in the PSP 0.01 build. There would have been a tutorial section involving a sobbing female inmate, and Danny might have needed to kill female inmates to progress.
Please to meet me! I'm killing my twin!
Based on the fact that there's dialogue for female inmates, and a tutorial reference to a sobbing female in the code. Not much really changes about the first few levels. The same goes for the old house, or Ghosts. Danny is again the playable character. The plot details would have been about the same as it is in the final version, though the extended ending cutscene would be used from the PSP 0.01 build. It would correlate closer to the ongoing story anyway. The mechanics would be closer to the build as well, where Danny needs to use a flashlight to search his house for Cortexa. Those are simple changes. Now on to the more complex stuff, because instead of sexual deviance next, we're going to neighborhood, or domestic disturbance. Danny is the playable character, and it's not a flashback. This is set right after Ghosts. Leo gets right to his plan to fight back against the project and enlists Danny in it. By now, Danny knows that Leo is a part of his head, but he trusts him. And given everything that the project has done, he's willing to go along with the plan to sabotage them and bring them down. Danny must lure 3 project scientists out of their houses to kill them. The Legion, in this case the ones with the cross and cloak designs, are patrolling the streets. Scientists are in the houses that have red mailboxes, and one scientist needs to be lured out by breaking his TV dish. Newspaper, milk bottle, and flashlight would have appeared as weapons in this version, and the picket fence execution would have appeared here. The ending chase by SWAT would still occur, but it would end after Danny hops the fences by the pool. Danny's house isn't nearby like it is in the final game. You would just escape the scene with Leo. We're sort of getting back on track with the next level, which is SM Nightclub, or Sexual Deviants. In this one, Leo is the playable character, and the plot details are mostly the same as they are in the final version. Danny and Leo confront Judy and get the keys to the safe house. Judy might be wearing her gimp outfit here. Sort of like in the earlier cutscene versions, Leo climbs the fence into the nightclub, whereas in the final one you only see Danny do it. The machete would have appeared here as a weapon, and some of the historical environmental executions, like the Iron Maiden, guillotine, and dentist chair, wouldn't appear here. However, I think that the toilet and meat hook executions still would have shown up. And based on audio files, the person being tortured in the basement would have been a female prisoner instead of a male one. Now on to the juicy part, the first cut level that I'm going to try to piece together. AO5 or the History Museum. In this one, I'm just going based off what's known, what little is known, so there's a lot of guesswork here, and a lot of room for interpretation. Danny would be the playable character, and aside from further encounters with environmental executions, this level would introduce firearms and boss battles. In the story, Danny and Leo's rampage through the nightclub didn't go unnoticed. With the watchdogs on their tail, they take shelter in a nearby history museum. There would have been security guards as initial enemies, sort of like ritual cleansing, followed by the watchdogs. The mace would have appeared here as a weapon, and I think the metal hook would have appeared here too. It has audio for all its executions, so it sounds like it was finished. And there's a developer description you can find mentioning Danny impaling enemies in this level, so maybe you would have used the metal hook for it? Or I could be misinterpreting one of the other environmental executions. So that's up for interpretation. I do firmly believe, though, that the Aztec altar, Hangman's Noose, and Guillotine would have shown up here as environmental executions. I think the first 2 are finished, but they just didn't have any room for them in the final game, sort of like what happened to the Guillotine. Story-wise, after killing the initial guards and navigating through the museum, the watchdogs would have arrived to apprehend Danny. Agent Prime, a cut character, would have been leading the charge. Unknown how he would have looked, maybe the Razor Moon interpretation, but who knows. Danny and the watchdogs would use revolvers against each other in the ensuing gun battle. Near the exit for the museum, Agent Prime barricades his way out and tries standing his ground against Danny, sort of like the Ramirez boss fight in the first Manhunt. In order to get out, Danny must wound him enough with the revolver to perform a grisly execution against him, since we know that there's an execution specified for Agent Prime. We just don't have any audio for it. We don't know how it would have entailed. But I'm guessing it would have been pretty bloody. Up next would have been CIA Trap, or Most Wanted. Danny would have been the playable character once again. The intro would be like the 0.01 PSP build. There would have been no flashback to Judy's death here. Danny's hands are bloodied in the cutscene because he had just executed Agent Prime. He's literally just on the run from the previous level. He's in shock from what happened, but Leo urges him on. The enemies would probably be the Bloodhounds, followed by the Watchdogs. There are references to Bloodhounds being agents in the 0.01 PSP build, and I'm guessing more of those would have popped up. Maybe they would have been indirectly or directly employed by the CIA in some way. It would fit with their ultra-nationalist outfits from the beta designs. Civilians will also show up near the end of the level, sort of like how it is in all the builds. The sawed-off shotgun would have also shown up as a weapon, either as a pickup or something for the civilians or other enemies. Otherwise, the level would have played out the same way and had the same story beats. However, where it goes from here is where things differ. Tolerance Zone, or Red Light, would have been the next level. Leo would have been the playable character. After all the chaos of escaping the Bloodhounds and the Watchdogs, Danny would be determined to learn about his past and why the Project want to hunt him down. Leo's frustrated since he just wants revenge and he doesn't trust Judy, but he goes along with the plan. The enemies would be the same as the final version, so at first the Red Kings, then the cops, then the Watchdogs. The Blackjack would have been used by the Watchdogs late in the level, and the Pleasure Stick weapon would have shown up in the Velvet Glove shop. The end puzzle from the 0.01 PSP build would also be present, where you have to knock down the stairs to get to the top of the building leading to the safe house. Michael's picture would not be in the safe house, though. The ending cutscene would be similar to the 0.01 PSP version, where Danny goes through his things, finds a change of clothes and a gun, and gets another lead on Judy. And this would directly lead to the next level, which would be Safe House, or as the files call it, 2 Tolerance Zone. It might have been another part of Red Light early on. It also might have gone on longer, with the pervs ambushing Danny in the theater and being present in the modeled exterior of the building. Danny would have still been the playable character, and it pretty much would have had the same story beats. The revolver would have been the main weapon here, since the deagle, or the heavy handgun showing up, seems like a choice by Rockstar London that they walked back. However, the dumpster and vending machine executions would have also appeared. At the end of the level, Leo would have jokingly praised Danny's killing spree at the end, but Danny would have tossed away his revolver in disgust and said he's sick of the killing, and then he needs to find Judy. The opening cutscene also wouldn't have mentioned Michael because he wouldn't be relevant in this part of the story. Up next would be the second of the cut levels, Sorority House. And again, I'm just going off guesswork here, based off what we know and what developers have told us, and a lot of speculation from there. This would have been another Danny-centric level. You'd play as Danny, and this would be a flashback to 2001. Danny encounters something or someone that triggers a flashback to that year. Leo would just call it a loose end, but Danny can't let go of the feeling that he's forgetting something important. In the opening, Danny and Leo would have escaped the project after the Pikmin bridge was implanted into him. Danny is determined to find his daughter and to get her to safety before the project can harm her or use her as leverage against him. Leo urges him to move on and says that it isn't worth it, but Danny strongly disagrees with him. The enemies would have been security guards, similar to how it is in a history museum in this case. The window and broken window executions would have been present. This is based off some alleged developer comments about them showing up in this level. When Danny finds his daughter, she's horrified by him for unclear reasons and runs from him. Danny pursues her through the house, leading to the flashback exchange from Ghosts. The one where she's telling him that he's a psycho and to stay away from her. When she's cornered, Danny's daughter finally elaborates. She blames him for ruining their life, saying she killed her mom and was a sicko toward her. Danny is caught off guard by the accusations, and in his shock, his daughter escapes from him. Leo urges Danny to flee when the police begin closing in on him. Up next, based on the internal level order, would have been Burn, or Ritual Cleansing, where Leo would have been the playable character, and it would have taken place in 2007 instead of being a flashback. Danny would have struggled with the revelations from the flashback, but Leo would have dismissed them and encouraged Danny to resume their campaign against the project. The flashlight would have been shown up and used by her early enemies, and I think it's possible the blowtorch might have shown up. It would have fit the level's name and theme, and like the metal hook, it has all of its audio done. It's unclear why it was cut, how far it got. It has an icon too, but that's also just speculation by me. The music, though, would have been much different if the PSP build and the intro cutscene music are anything to go by. Would have had a far different background song compared to the final version. Level would have mostly played the same though, outside of those changes, and the fact that it's present day instead of a flashback. Up next would have been Brothel, or Bee's Honeypot. Danny would have been the playable character, and at least one enemy would have been a perv member. One of the pervs would have taken Judy hostage at some point in the level, based on some cut dialogue.
You ain't gonna kill me, man! If you try to come out here, I'll kill the bitch! Okay, you got 3 seconds to disappear or I'll kill her! Die, you fucking bitch!
Where you can hear one of the perv voice actors threatening Judy. The spiked baseball bat, hacksaw, and razor would have appeared here as weapons, judging by the fact they're present in the 0.01 build, if you use the cheat commands from the developer menu. Judy could have also been wearing the GIMP outfit in this level, based on the early trailers and stuff that showed it. When Danny and Leo confront her, she would have warned Danny not to trust anybody, but before being able to explain, she would have been shot by one of the bloodhounds or the watchdogs. The implication here, though, is that she's telling Danny not to trust Dr. White. She would not be talking about Leo in this instance. The events of the level would otherwise play out the same. The next level would have been Medicine Lab, or Origins. Leo would have taken the reins as the playable character. Danny's convinced that Pikmin's their best chance at regaining their memories. Leo doesn't believe that remembering everything would be for the best, but Danny is determined to figure out why he's accused of killing his wife and destroying his family. Like in the 0.01 PSP build, the Project Militia would be enemies in the last section of the level. I think the acid bottle might have appeared here. It has full sounds for executions, and it would have complemented the sterile lab setting. That's speculation though. In the finale cutscene, Leo would interrogate Pikmin about removing the bridge using Danny's body, like in the 0.01 and AO builds. It wouldn't have shown Leo being the interrogator, but Danny, since there's no real twist at this point about Leo's origins. It would have played the same otherwise, and the ending would have triggered another 2001 flashback. The next level would be Plaza, or Assassination. Danny would have been the playable character. The opening cutscene starts just as Danny has killed Stanley Grex, the state governor and a prominent funder of the project. His file is referred to as governor in the PSP 0.01 build. That's why I'm speculating he might have been a politician instead of a project scientist and a prominent funder of it. Leo would have been proud of the serious step they took toward bringing the project down, and when they get spotted by the project militia, they're forced to find another escape route. Early on, the project militia would have used light handguns instead of the heavy handguns, sort of like how it is in that PSP build. And there would have been a puzzle involving a crane that needed to be resolved by shooting the wires holding up the girders.
Okay, we need to get to the other side. Try to shoot those girders down with your sniper rifle. Look around for some ammo.
Otherwise, the level would play out and end the same way. Time for some very strong speculation. We have a level that we know literally nothing about. A13, which is just noted as being unused in the files. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know about this one. This is just me guessing. I think it might have been a present-day level. Maybe Danny would remember more about his time with the project after the flashback, and he would have been convinced that Michael is the next key to resolving everything. Now, there are mentions that there was a silo level meant for Manhunt 2 that got cut. It's not clear how far this got, if it made it to the map menu, but maybe this unused level would have been that cut silo level. Maybe it was set in a silo where Danny and Leo would corner and kidnap Michael. I think there would have been some sort of subterfuge needed to lure Michael to a boat, because in the next level, Michael's like, "You deceived me," and it would have fit if he had been lured there under false pretenses, or if he had been betrayed by Danny in some way. And that's all I've got for this one, because there's literally nothing to work with. We have the name, and that tells us so little. We have a little bit of context about another level that got cut. The next level should be clearer, though. Sugar Factory, or Best Friends. In this one, Danny would have been the playable character. Danny and Leo would have pursued Michael through the sugar factory, and it would have been present day instead of a 2001 flashback. The reason I think Danny would have been playable is that Michael is shouting at Danny throughout the chase. He's calling him his best friend and everything of that sort. And also, although Danny is thrown off by the initial Pikmin bridge malfunction in the opening cutscene, by the end of it, he does seem ready to get back into the fray and to go after him. Plus, the dialogue about Leo going after him is used with placeholder audio in the PSP build, so I'm guessing that was a choice by Rockstar London to have level fit their story. The Project Militia would have used revolvers and shotguns. The shotgun can be spawned in the PSP build, as well as the crowbar. Most likely both of those weapons would have appeared in some way. I also think combat would be a bit tougher because this is a later level. The game expects you to know your way around firearms. Otherwise, the plot of the level would have played out the same, and there would have been similar set pieces and things of that sort. It's a good level. I don't have any faults with it. And it seems like it would have been still a good fit for a later sort of section, given that it's a longer one and offers up different variety of scenarios, including a boss fight. Now, for a complicated one, Cemetery, or Personality Clash. Danny would have been the playable character, and I do not think this would have been a level in Danny's head. This is the most broken level in the 0.01 PSP build. It ties to executing the Ghost Watchdogs and mini-bosses. I think those were still work-in-progress additions made by Rockstar London. I think this would have been a real scenario. I think since there's a mention of the cemetery in Danny's house, and since it feels more like a real-world location than an abstract dream, I think Danny would have paid a visit to the Whispering Pines Cemetery. Based on the weapon spawns in the early build, the shotgun with light, mace, fire axe, and flashlight would have appeared as weapons. I could see the light-based weapons being useful in the crypt level, especially by hunters. I think the enemies would have been the Project Militia, since their texture files are in the 0.01 PSP build for this level. There are also some unused voice lines by the Project Militia VAs that go unused in this folder, which lends credence to the idea of them being the antagonists and the main hunters you face off against.
Proceeding with search and destroy, sweep.
Where the hell are you, knuckle draggers? He's trapped and helpless! End this, now!
It also fits with the Project Militia being more prominent later on, as I believe in this story, the roles of the Watchdogs and the Project Militia would have been reversed. The Watchdogs would have been the early responders here, whereas as things get more dire, the Project Militia would take over and try to stop Danny and Leo. In the final game, the Watchdogs are the ones who fight them to the end, while the Project Militia are basically destroyed in the flashback missions. I think Danny would have been trying to visit his wife's grave for answers. Leo has an unused line dismissing the idea of Danny finding atonement or something along those lines in the level files.
What's the matter, Danny? Trying to turn over a new leaf or something? You know you want to kill these fuckers.
And since it's a graveyard, I think it would have made sense for the tombstone execution to show up here. There's also a scythe weapon that got cut from the game, and there's a statue with a scythe in the cemetery, so maybe it would have appeared as a weapon there? This is pure speculation, but I think the ending would have involved Danny being hit with more memories of his past. He would have remembered volunteering for the Pikmin Bridge experiment, losing his memory bit by bit, and getting detained by Pikmin and Dr. White when he became out of control. Leo would have made himself known to Danny afterward, and he would have offered him his help in bringing down the project. The next level would have been TV Studio, or Broadcast Interrupted. Danny would have been the playable character. And now that he's learned more about his past self and he's becoming more fear of the harm he's caused, Leo wants him to get back on track. They still need to take down the project. Sure, Michael, Judy, and Dr. Pikmin are dead, but Dr. White's still out there. He recommends attacking a TV studio where Dr. White will be doing an interview. Danny and Leo talk more during the level, with Leo commenting on how TVMK was using the studio to broadcast coded messages to viewers. The Bloodhounds would have been the main enemy faction just like in the base game, and like in the earlier builds, the axe would have been used by at least one of the Bloodhounds. Maybe the prop execution would have shown up here since it is a studio setting, and it would make sense for different props to show up. It's just not clear what the particular prop would be. What is clear is that 5 past high noon would not have been the setting for the second to last battle. That set was a completely different show in the PSP 0.01 build, and even in the PS2 AO build you can see cameras marked with that show's logo, so it seems like that was the original intention for that set. It would have been a sitcom called That Bitch Next Door. There also would have been an advertisement for Frankie and the Freaks, though in this case it would be Frisbee and the Freaks. And I think it's possible that the puppet Frisbee might have even shown up as an Easter egg. After that would come Creepy Farm, or Altered State. Danny would have been the playable character. The intro and outro would have been same as the 0.01 PSP builds cutscenes. As soon as Danny leaves the studio, Dr. White would have ambushed him and sedated him. When he would come to, Leo and Dr. White would be gone. Danny would rush through the farm set to find them, and Leo's comments on executions would be absent. Leo would also make a warning about being held captive by the project, judging by some unused voice lines.
Danny, I'm being held captive at the windmill on the farm. Help me. Please, Danny, please. Get inside the barn.
The Bloodhounds would have also been the main enemy faction. And judging by developer comments, there would have been a scene where the Bloodhound's helicopter drops noxious gas beneath it, which would have forced Danny to hide in a wheat field to avoid detection. Since there is a field like that near the church, maybe that's where Danny would have hid, and maybe that's where the setting would have been. It would also explain the very long and awkward run-up to the church and area as well. Since nothing really happens there, maybe Danny would have run from the helicopter after that, and he would have hid, and then the Bloodhounds would have shown up. I think the milk bottle and a hacksaw would have shown up as weapons, since they appear there in earlier builds. Maybe the hatchet or the ice axe or the Manhunt 1 axe would have shown up, but given how unfinished and buggy it is in the PSP build, I'm gonna guess it might not have. It's also possible the Harvester execution would have appeared here, since it would have fit the farm setting. It is a TV show set, but it would make sense to have actual farm equipment present. At the end of the level, Leo would have been found tied up in a wheelchair. When Danny tries to free him, Dr. White tranquilizes him again. She had manipulated Danny using her knowledge of the Pikmin Bridge to draw him out, creating a scenario where Leo would appear in danger and need saving. After that would come Manor, or release therapy. Leo would have been the playable character, and like Cemetery or Personality Clash, I think this would have been real. It would not have been a set piece of Danny's mind. It looks too realistic and too plausible. Removing the filter, it's basically just another project holdout. In this scenario, Dr. White and the remaining project members would have captured Danny and Leo with the intention to study their combined mental fortitude. Most other subjects have died after having the bridge in their head for this long. Danny is a rare exception they want to figure out more about. Leo does not want this to happen, though. He still wants the project to burn, and now that he has control of Danny's body, he makes a break for it in the same way as the final game. The Project Militia would have been the main enemy, since by now the Watchdogs would have been out of the picture. And since the PSP build features them in the early version, the Legion wouldn't have fit this scenario. The shotgun and glass shard are also loaded into this level, so I think they would have shown up in enemy hands, or at least the shotgun would. Maybe the glass shard would have been an optional pickup for Leo, if he wanted to keep things silent. I think there would have been a boss fight against a special enemy at the end, in that circular library room where you fight Danny in the final game. It's unclear what this enemy would have been. Maybe that special Legion design, maybe that one enemy that has that World War II Japanese aviator sort of costume. Who knows? I'm just convinced there would have been a boss fight at the end similar to the Danny one, where you have to go between the different bookcases and shoot at him and whittle down his health until Leo can move on. Now for the second of the two unused levels, A19, which is also just called Unused. And there are no clear answers about what this entails. Since I've already used up the silo level possibility, there's nothing to go on. I am 100% speculating and pinning the whole centerpiece of the story on something that there isn't a ton of evidence on, so take this with a huge grain of salt. In this level, Danny would have been the playable character. I think he would have learned the whole truth about his past here. In the intro, Dr. White would confront Danny before he and Leo can carry their rampage further into the complex. Would have been revealed that the manor connects to a renovated Dixmoor asylum. Dr. White would have leveled with Danny. She would have left out some inconvenient facts, but she would have tried to tell him most of the truth. The intro and outro cutscenes would have been set in 2007, but I think the main level would have been the final 2001 flashback. It would have also been the first chronological flashback, filling in gaps left by the previous ones. With the Watchdogs on their tails, Leo convinces Danny to abandon his family and get out of town with him, but Danny doesn't budge on that. He's horrified by the idea of leaving his family behind. He fights his way through the watchdogs to get back to his home. Compared to how it is in Ghosts, the house is in pristine condition, sort of like how it is in the intro to Bee's Honeypot with the flashback. Danny's family would have been horrified to see him come home bloodied and armed, especially with police sirens in the distance. Danny would insist on taking them with him out of town, but when his wife demands to know more and questions why the project would hunt him, Leo would take control of Danny. He would have killed Danny's wife right in front of his kids, and his son would have fled to the basement crying and terrified. In the end, Leo wants to bring down the project, and Danny's family presents a real risk of sabotaging that goal. Leo wanted Danny to only rely on him and to work on him to take down the project, and in order to ensure this is the case, he wanted to destroy Danny's connection with his family completely, which is also where that very strange dialogue about Danny's daughter comes up. When Danny's daughter calls him a monster, Leo is still in control of Danny's body. Leo acts predatory and starts suggesting starting over the family with her to completely poison the well and to ensure that his kids would absolutely hate him from now on. She's saved when the Pikmin bridge malfunctions again, allowing Danny to regain control at the cost of his recent memories of what happened. Danny, in a confused state, flees his house while his daughter calls the police on him. In the outro, Danny is badly shaken by the truth. He's outraged at Leo destroying his family, and he's guilt-ridden over what happened since he volunteered for the experiment. He begs Dr. White to help him make peace with it, which she eagerly offers, much to Leo's anger. Since Danny has killed too many project personnel to be trusted again, and since he knows too much to be let go, she offers to lobotomize him so he can be free of his past sins. Which takes us to A20, or End. Danny would have been the playable character. The level would have been set in a new and remodeled Dixmoor Asylum, which is revealed to be connected to the manor seen in Release Therapy. In the intro, Leo gets back in contact with Danny, who is waiting to be lobotomized so he can live in ignorance of his past. Leo demands that Danny take ownership of his crimes and not let the project live on to torment more people.
Look, you can't just sit around waiting to be lobotomized. Get your shit together, we're leaving.
A storm like the one in the intro sets the Dixmoor inmates and Legion members loose. Leo recommends they exploit the chaos to kill the remaining project members. Danny is given the choice between helping Dr. White quell the riot or helping Leo bring down the project once and for all, which would have potentially led to A20E1 or A20E2. E1 would have been the Dr. White ending. This would have been the bad ending. You would have played as Danny, fighting his way through the cell blocks of the new Dixmoor Asylum, battling the inmates and Legion members while Leo berates him. The level would culminate in a final boss battle against Leo, basically Leo projecting himself, and Danny fighting against sort of a projection of Leo. I guess the idea of the reality-bending aspects of the Pikmin bridge affecting Danny's cognition. Sort of like how it is in Fight Club, with the narrator and with Tyler Durden getting into a fist fight, despite Tyler not actually being there. We can assume that they're just duking it out in this instance. Or maybe it would have been more of a gun battle, who knows. Leo would accuse Danny of turning himself into a monster, sort of like that one unused line by him that has been voiced, and he would have projected his suburban desire for his daughter onto Danny, sending Danny into a rage. I think Leo would have used the same voice lines he has as his personality Clash Hunter form, just without the demonic filter, since they would have fit the scenario, and honestly they were already voiced and present in that build. The PSP 0.01 build wouldn't have taken too much work to just overlay the voice line a few times with different speeds to give it that demonic echo. The lines about locking Leo away and all that would have also fit the asylum setting pretty well. In the end, Danny would kill Leo and in doing so save the project from being upended. When the dust settles, he submits to the lobotomy, now at peace with losing his memories. E2, or the Leo ending, would have been the good ending, and Danny would have also been the playable character. Danny would have fought his way through the offices and administrative areas of the new Dixmoor Asylum, battling the remnants of the Project Militia assigned to guard it. He would push through to where Dr. White is holding up. A boss fight of sorts against Dr. White would have ensued. She would have taunted him about whether he could live with his past and failures, but Danny doesn't back down. He knows she wants him removed as a loose end, and he sees her death as a chance to avenge everyone he had failed in the past. The boss fight would have probably involved battling waves of enemies until, like Starkweather and Manhunt 1, Dr. White would make a flimsy attempt to kill Danny. He would execute her to end the project's madness. Leo would have had special lines encouraging Danny to keep hammering the Project Militia until they get their freedom, most likely meant for the aforementioned boss battle.
I can smell freedom already. Just keep hammering them till they're all gone.
With Dr. White and the Project Militia dead, the project basically crumbles. Danny and Leo escape the new Dixmoor Asylum as it falls to inmate control. Danny wonders if all the bloodshed was worth it, but Leo holds on to the belief that the project had to be destroyed no matter what. Danny makes it clear that he doesn't trust Leo and he hasn't forgiven them for what happened, but all they have to rely on is each other at this point. The two walk down an autumn road like the one in the final game's outro, uncertain of what their futures have, but forced to work together for their mutual survival. Now I think A21 or New House would have been a bonus cutscene that shows up if you do the Dr. White ending. It would have been an epilogue of sorts. In his new apartment, Danny would have lived on as David Joyner, blissfully unaware of his role in the project or the actions of the game. He goes through a typical suburban weekend routine, freshening up and making breakfast alone. He would sit down in front of the TV and flip on his favorite channel, TVMK. An episode of Frisbee and the Freaks would have come on. When Danny laughed at the antics of the puppets, his eyes would reflect the coded messages sent by the project. The player is left with the implication that the cycle of killing might start all over again, either with Danny or another recipient of the Pikmin Bridge. I am completely spitballing the A21 idea, so that is all speculation. I have nothing to go on aside from the fact that it's mentioned it's in a new house, and it's at the end of the level order. As for the bonus levels, no clue about these ones. There are 5 in total, and if they're anything like the Manhunt 1 bonus levels, they probably would not be canon to the story at all. They would probably just reuse existing level settings and different scenarios, like killing as many enemies until you die, or fighting through a unique redesigned level with different enemies. Who knows? There's nothing really to go on. And that's it. That is my big theory as to how Rockstar Vienna's Manhunt 2 would have gone. No idea how much of it would prove to be accurate. I think there's a lot we still need to learn. There's a lot of context for the game we still don't have. It'd be nice to learn more about the story, either through a developer interview or through an earlier build of the game, but we don't have those yet. I am still hopeful that the PS2 or Xbox 0.01 builds will surface, whatever they're called or whenever they might pop up. Who knows, it took a while for that early PSP build to pop up. Maybe it'll take a while. I'm just hoping it'll happen sooner rather than later. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your patience as well. I know this took a really long time for me to do. There were a lot of hiccups that happened, and I wanted to focus on other projects before getting back to this. I had started work on it after that big speculation video about the early PS2 or Xbox build, but learning more from that developer interview threw off my original ideas for what the story would have entailed. Like I said before, the description has the original story draft that I had written up. It's different in some areas, not so much in others. The big difference is that Leo is a real person in this story. And there are fewer details based on stuff that we learned after the fact. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for the support. Thanks for your time. Thanks for going down this crazy little thought experiment of what the early story of Manhunt 2 might have been. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to see how wrong I'm proven, or by some crazy means if I am actually right about some stuff. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care.